We started?
We're on.
Hey, welcome to episode 3 of the Inner Work Podcast. My name is Jason,
I'm Paul.
and our good friend David is here with us in spirit.
Yes, he is. You see him? His spirit right here?
Yeah, present. So today I was very inspired by talking with Paul about his purpose, his dharma, or his big why of what drives him to do what he does. I think I want to approach this from the mindset of like, I don't even know who you are, which was even just 2 years ago, where I knew about Paul. I was like, oh, this guy seems like he's a fun guy that's in good shape. That was my observation. And I've come to learn that there are more things about him than just being in good shape.
I hope so.
How would you describe Dharma to someone that is that's never heard of that word?
I'm glad you asked that question because it's one of those kind of pop culture words in yoga and spiritual circles that gets talked about a lot, but maybe we don't have a good understanding of what it means. Like many Sanskrit words, it is a Sanskrit word from the ancient language in India. It has many meanings, and the most common meanings are sort of what most people, I believe, think it means, which relates to purpose, but it also has the double corollary that our purpose is connected to the greater purpose of name your divine word, cosmic consciousness, divinity itself, nature, the cosmos, God, if you will. So Dharma can be stated as our purpose or our duty or our aim in this particular lifetime. It does uphold a sense of the soul is eternal and this physical body is here for a reason for these 60, 70, 90 years, thereabouts. And that purpose supports the greater purpose of the whole universe, the one life, all of nature itself. So purpose, that's a good way to say it, is what's my duty? What am I here to do?
When you came across that actual definition, how did it land for you initially? Was this thing of where, oh, my life can mean so much more than it needs to be, or did it help actually add more fire to your drive of why you were doing what you were doing, or how would you describe it?
It was comforting to learn about it, and I'll tell you why I felt comforted when I learned about this. When I first started exploring spiritual concepts, other than Christianity, because religions are spiritual, but a very different kind of spiritual pursuit. So I grew up in a Christian household and with a Christian framework and mindset. But then when I got into my mid-20s, and I said this in the first episode that we did together with David, that I realized that I didn't have to, if I chose not to be a devout Christian, I didn't have to be. And that alone lightened my load, it lightened my burden. And with that realization came the tiptoeing into the realm of other spiritual traditions and concepts and available paths, if you will. And that's around the time when I encountered theosophy, when I met Terry Hunt, my spiritual mentor that I've talked about many, many times. And with meeting him and tiptoeing into these other spiritual paths, the words karma were explored, the concept of reincarnation was explored, and the concept of dharma, and amongst other things like just general meditation. How do you do it? What is the soul? What is our actual goal in meditation other than just real world mindfulness? Is there something deeper than that going on? So to answer your question specifically, it gave me comfort because before I learned about these things, I felt a lot of pressure in life to do so much in this life because this is all I've got. Now, this could be a whole rabbit hole in and of itself. How much are we supposed to accomplish in this lifetime? Is this all we have? When we die, do we come back? Is this all we've got? Or is there something more? And although we're not going to remember this lifetime in our next life, if you do believe that there is a next life, a part of us does remember. And the part of us that does remember is our soul. And the soul understands your previous dharma, your current dharma, and what your future dharmas can be. And it's all about learning. It's all about lessons. And it's all about the fact that any progress is good progress. 1 millimeter of a step forward is progress. That took so much pressure off me. So when I learned about Dharma, it made me feel so good, because even though at first in my mid-20s I didn't specifically know, all right, this is my life purpose, this is exactly what I know I need to do. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that anything that I do to move towards whatever it is, any step towards it is valuable and acceptable. Previous to that, I thought that I had to be president of the world. Like, I had to be the best thing available. I had to get A pluses on everything. I had to be an overachiever in everything. I had to maximize everything I did, because once I turn 60, 70, 80, and I start to wind down for this life, that's all I've got. And I better have made a gigantic legacy for myself, because once the lights go out, that's it. So it changed everything. When I learned about Dharma, it changed my whole worldview.
It's interesting that it removed the pressure, but do you find that it found a balance between, because it seems like it would be easy to almost be apathetic.
Yes, I see why you'd say that too. But it put the onus on me. It gave me the power to choose, rather than, I know that if you're a devout Christian or you're a devout religionist in any religion, I know that you can still obviously choose your job and your path, so to speak. But I felt very constricted and restricted in the framework of a religion where I had to do certain things in order to be called a Christian. And there was no apathy, because I felt empowered. I felt the opposite. I felt that I could find it and choose it. But some people don't want that. That's sort of unique. Most people want to be told what to do, and here's how you do life. Stay in this box, and you're going to be saved, and you're going to be good. And that's comforting to a lot of people. That's fine. It's no different than either having an employer who gives you a paycheck every couple weeks versus being self-employed, having to go out and find your own business, like a commission salesperson, for example. It's kind of that concept. Some people would thrive in a commission job, 0 salary, and some people would be terrified. They need a structured job. I go clock in, do my job. I know I'm getting paid what I'm getting paid. Then I clock out at 5, and that's it. And both are good.
Yeah. So with that being said, could you go into how you found your Dharma, or if it's constantly evolving, or where you're at this current chapter in your life?
Jason, I want to say thank you to, this is such an honor that you're asking, that you care enough to ask me. And so thank you. It's not always easy to talk about myself, and thank you for that. The story really begins when I met Terry, and I keep talking about this guy because he's a huge, gigantic influence on my life, and I believe I'm a fairly prominent influence on his as well. The way I found my Dharma, it's so funny to say that. In real estate, I was helping my cousin purchase a home, and her name was Bonnie. She's a beautiful soul who's no longer on this earth. She's on my mom's side, so she's Arabic. My mother is from Syria, so I'm half Syrian and half Italian. And so Bonnie Elnis was on my mom's side, from Syria, and she and her husband were purchasing a home in Las Vegas, and it was 2006 or 7. And she had been studying spiritual concepts for many years, and already knew Terry Hunt and had been studying with him since he was teaching classes at his home here in Las Vegas. Well, for those of you who have purchased a home or sold a home, or for those of you who are realtors, you'll know that you spend quite a bit of time with someone when you're going through the process of buying a home. So Bonnie and I spent many hours together searching for homes, writing contracts, doing home inspections, and I learned about what she was doing with her spiritual pursuits, and I was very curious, and I've always been curious about things in life. I've had a very inquisitive mind, and she was talking about a process that she was doing called transmission meditation, and I didn't know what that meant. I barely knew what meditation was. I thought it was making your mind go blank or seeing Jesus, or I don't know what. So I said, tell me about this transmission meditation. And then she said, well, I'm not really that qualified to explain it in a good way, but I know someone who can. And so she took me to one of Terry's classes, and he was teaching basic theosophy, and I've since taught the basic theosophy course with him, and on my own. You've attended the philosophy course, which is an evolution of that. And I met Terry, and I attended his classes. We sat around in his living room, and he was one of the topics one evening was karma. Here we go. Let's talk about karma. Here's what it is. Then another topic was the soul. What is the human soul? What's it like? How do you access it? Does the soul die when the physical body, like actual things that are stated? And of course you can say that's BS. I don't believe it. But it resonated with me at such a deep level that there was no question that I was starting to find my Dharma right then and there. To specifically answer your question, the things that he was talking about and teaching resonated at such a holistic level that I knew this was extremely special. And I hung out after his classes and wanted to talk to him, and he thought that I was just some kid who didn't know. I was maybe 26 at the time or something. He didn't give me much attention until I kept pursuing private time with him to ask more questions and to follow up on more things. And as we talked more, and I knew more and more that this is my path. And then I had the pleasure to introduce him to Eckhart Tolle. And he didn't know much about Eckhart Tolle before, but when I showed him Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth, he was so impressed because this is a modern day offering of the ancient teachings in a practical, real world environment, which complements the theosophy that he was teaching. So the concepts of, the plan and purpose of life, reincarnation, the evolution of man through different realms of existence, this ancient wisdom has been around since the beginning of time. Eckhart Tolle wrote a book, 15 years ago on how to walk that path and pursue the process of evolution consciously and in your own being. How do you do that in today's life? And so Terry thought that was pretty masterful of Eckhart Tolle to do that. And we decided to teach a class together on merging Eckhart Tolle's work and theosophy. Also, the Yoga Sutras are a big part of that. So as we're going through this process from 2007, 8, 9, we taught our first class together in 2009. I was pretty sure that I was on my path. Now, I was deep into my career of real estate though at the time, and I loved real estate, and it has been and still is a wonderful career. But I never thought that it was my purpose to be a realtor for my whole life. I never thought that I was going to die being a realtor. So 2009, we taught together. Fast forward to 2013, I took a yoga teacher training. I still hadn't done a yoga class by then. I did my first yoga class in 2011, Bikram. We talked a little bit about this. So throughout these years, my eyes were opening to what I knew my path was going to be. And it's just been solidifying more and more every year since then. Then we wrote our book together in 2012, got my yoga teacher training certificate in 2013, met Rod Stryker in 2014, and that's when I went into the just depths of hatha yoga practice and understanding how to incorporate the spiritual practices in the physical classes that I teach. I didn't learn playing Metallica from Rod Stryker, though. I learned that on my own. But I've taken these different rivers or avenues of streams of information and teachings and merged them into what my path has become. And it wasn't immediate, but it happened well. It happened as a flow. And then I knew.
So then when did you feel like you actually almost created a mantra out of your Dharma, or how would you phrase it in terms of was it the clarity workshop or?
Ooh, I love that. I don't think many people ever even do that unless they would take a course in some kind of deep personal growth, or take the Four Desires workshop with Rod Stryker or one of his teachers, or take my clarity workshop, which I'm one of Rod's students. So I've taken the Four Desires work and made it into what we've been calling the clarity workshop. For those of you who are watching, Jason's attended it with me twice, and I like to offer it twice a year. And in that course, we create what we call a Dharma Code, which is a mantra of your soul's purpose. It's a mantra. Now, I know other yoga teachers and other personal development, self-growth courses do something similar, where we do try to uncover our path and purpose and create. I know our friend Megan teaches something similar. I haven't attended Megan's course, but she calls it your anthem.
I did that too.
Did you do the course?
It was right after yours. That's why it was perfect timing.
Tell me how the anthem and the Dharma Code are similar or different, because I think are they similar?
Similar. I feel like they're actually a curriculum in my mind. I'm
Okay.
like you taking your course and then taking Megan's,
Uh-huh.
where I took my Dharma Code, and then she incorporates a lot of Joe Dispenza kind of approaches.
Love
which
him.
is-
Love him.
Yeah, for those that don't know, like a big kind of foundation that he goes along his lines of is explaining how thoughts become your choices and choices become your behaviors. Behaviors become one's reality, and reality is what leads to someone's personality and experience in life. So that's why we're having your Dharma Code. I took that, and then she kind of helps us create basically a soundtrack. So it's something that we would listen to, that we refine with her, and you listen to it, twice a day. So it becomes like this prescription of reframing my thoughts to be more assimilated towards what my purpose is.
This is amazing. This is another tool to use to find your path and to to be focused in life, right?
That's where I'm like, I hope for one day for y'all to like almost. This will be a whole. We'll talk about this later, but continue on with how you came up with your.
Sure.
What your Dharma mantra or.
You asked about how I came up with a mantra. I like the way you phrased that. Yeah, I hadn't done much of that work until I started training with Para Yoga. Rod Stryker was the teacher there, and is the teacher there. That is just one avenue for finding your purpose in life, and uncovering which of the 4 categories of main desires that your soul has is deficient, because we all have some work to do, whether it's learning how to balance work and life, whether how to incorporate more spirituality, whether it's basic needs, whether it's finances or shelter, at a basic level. So first understanding where we need to focus, and then uncovering what 1 or 2 things we can do to optimize that. And then it all starts falling into place. There are some specific techniques and practices, as you know, from the 4 Desires workshop and the Clarity workshop. There are plenty of other things I've done since then. There's a practice called Vichara, where we go back in time in causes of effects that we have in our life. We trace causes back to what we might think is a core cause, and then we dig deeper and see if that really is the core cause, and that helps us understand who we are at a deep level too. Let's see. Now, developing my Dharma Code for the first time, I did it in, 2016. And that empowered me to shift my real estate business, to shift my yoga teaching in certain ways. And I was still working with Terry very closely. So it's guided me. And I'm currently right now going through the process again on my own with Natalia. We're doing the 4 Desires process together. And so I'm creating a revised Dharma Code. And it won't change if you really do the work and get a good one for yourself, an accurate or appropriate one. You can redo it as much as you want throughout your life, but it shouldn't change that much, because it's part of your existence for this life. The way it shows up and the way you live it will change. Your sankalpa, your tangible goals that we're achieving in life will change, but the Dharma Code itself shouldn't change that much. So it was an amazing process that I went through, and I'll continue to teach it and do it myself throughout the rest of my life.
So you've alluded to it in a few times that one of your purposes is to teach or to be a teacher.
Yes.
How would you describe it?
Okay, good. That's what you're getting at, huh? Like that's what I hadn't actually said yet. Yes, flat out teacher. Yes, 100%. And I've instinctively, intuitively, subconsciously, superconsciously known that way before I did my first 4 Desires workshop, and way before I knew and started walking my path as a teacher. For example, in school, I was always on the student council. Like in high school, I was like the freshman class president. I was, teaching different things from student council and such. And then when I was at Bank of America, my first job after high school, I was a senior teller. So I was teaching the newer tellers. I always appreciated being able to communicate things in ways that people could understand. I hope I still do that. And then when I got into real estate in 2003, about 2-3 years into my real estate career, I was already a staff teacher at our Keller Williams office teaching new agents. So I was 4 years old in real estate teaching the newer agents. I loved it. We had something called boot camp, and then it evolved into a different name, and it was for new agents. I was teaching them, and then I evolved into like a higher level teacher where we were teaching higher level classes and courses on how to build teams and grow teams, since I had made my first hire and gotten an employee on my real estate team and a buyer's agent. So I was teaching in all different realms of life, and in 2009, as I mentioned, I assisted, well, it wasn't really an assist. We were co-teaching. Terry and I co-taught a course on Theosophy and Eckhart Tolle and the Yoga Sutras. We put it together and taught a course together. And incredibly nerve-wracking, because here I am, late 20s, teaching spirituality, and everyone was older than I was. And I was very self-conscious about that, but I tried. And I think I did a decent job with it. So and this was still way before I met Rod Stryker and did my Dharma Code. So I was already teaching, and I knew that was part of my path. I loved it. It forced me to show up and to create something. Like there's a saying in the world of teaching and education that when you can teach something, you know it you have to. It's a sign of you really knowing the material. Like you can teach it in a way that others can understand. So it forced me to learn it. Like I knew I wanted to learn things, but I'm not a natural reader and studier. I'm not. But I force myself to do it if I know I'm going to teach. So if I'm going to teach a class, I better get good at it.
It sounds like you've been teaching since you were like a teenager, but has there ever been a period of time, or can you recall over the last, 5-10 years, the longest stint you've gone without teaching? Like,
well, when lockdown happened during COVID, yeah.
And the reason I ask this is because I wonder what it feels like to you when you're not fulfilling your purpose.
Mm-hmm. I haven't gone that long. It's been a constant. I think, when I finished my yoga teacher training, the 200-hour, Zeke Vincent and Sherry Goldstein at the Yoga Sanctuary put me on the schedule like that week. And I didn't want that, but they said, no, you're teaching. So I never really did stop teaching. There might have been one or two times where I had a stint maybe in between studios, and I did feel stagnant. I did. And I felt like I might have been losing my edge, losing my game a little bit, off my game. So there have been times, and then during lockdown, I was teaching only virtually, and that was so different than teaching in person, and it didn't feel great. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the value of like understanding that what it feels like to you, who's someone who's just so driven and has had like this momentum for so long, that in contrast, there's maybe a lot of people out there that don't have that same momentum, and understanding like how people that get into that space get out of it. And maybe that's something that you witness in the clarity workshop. Maybe you can touch upon that.
Yes.
What happens when people, or what do you see in, and you don't have to get into too specifics with like names or anything, but okay, what people experience, what you've seen or what you observe in people that maybe don't have that momentum that you have in terms of knowing what their purpose is.
Sure. It's extremely common. It's very common to need to find drive and to need to find ways to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and move forward. And I was one of those people during that summer of 2020, man. I had a very dark time that summer, and it was extremely hard to find motivation in certain ways, man. So it's not like it's just by proxy, it's like firsthand. And I feel like we're lucky because in yoga, we have all the tools, dude. We have the tools to find, to help, to point us in the right direction. There's never going to be a substitute for doing the work ourselves. There will never be a substitute for that. But all the instructions are there. All the tools are there. And it's so, some of them are very, very basic. And we've talked about some of them: breathing, nature time, meditation time, quiet time, community time. These are kind of obvious. I'm sure people are going to be rolling their eyes like, oh yeah, that's going to help me from getting undepressed or getting motivated. But it goes way deeper than that. Those are the basics. We have to establish a foundation of basic, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, let's get our basic level down. Do you breathe every day? Do you do some kind of meditation every day? Do you have some quiet time, preferably outside every day, and breathe some fresh air? Do you do a physical routine every day? It doesn't have to be a vigorous Ashtanga practice. It could be some yin yoga. Do you have your basic health routines sort of in line? Okay, that's important. So your brain needs to function, your blood needs to flow, and then we can start working on, let's maybe find some Dharma. So how do we do that? Well, do you read? Do you watch educational programs, or is it just Game of Thrones all the time? Do you surround yourself with smart people that maybe have more experience than you? Where are you getting your sources of information? Are you constantly following stories about chemtrails and conspiracy theories all the time? Or do you educate yourself on something I would believe to be more powerful and mindful and appropriate for spiritual growth? Then, of course, you can take something like Megan Wilson's course and learn how to create your anthem, or take My Clarity workshop, or read a book on personal growth. So all these things, and it doesn't happen like that, there is a teacher out there for everyone. If Eckhart Tolle doesn't resonate, don't read him. Wayne Dyer, read Deepak Chopra, some people are probably rolling their eyes at Joe Dispenza. There are ways to approach the truth.
Yeah. And I think, like you mentioned, there's some voice or a roadmap to where someone has experienced before, whether it's something like spirituality or something where there's a voice out there for everyone to have a roadmap based off of history. And I think that what I think you kind of help cultivate our communities, and that's where I kind of wanted to go into, is like what you see in terms of these teaching communities that you're kind of like creating these pop-ups, whether it be in your backyard or at yoga studios. Like, what are you, since beginning this yoga or this teaching journey and where you are now, where do you see this going?
With me specifically?
Yeah, where do you, what keeps you going in terms of this? I think a more direct question is what about teaching fills your cup?
Ah, nice. I love your questions, man. You ask such good questions. When you know you're on your path, you are naturally getting filled daily. When you know you're on your path, and I kind of feel extra lucky that I do know my path, but it's not luck. I've done some work, and I hope that most of us can find that feeling, find that flow. So what is it specifically? Well, I'm a huge believer that the universe does help when you're helping it. In other words, if we're too selfish, I don't think the universe is going to help us. I don't think the stars will align. I don't think doors are going to open. But if we're taking care of ourselves, which is kind of, you need to be a little selfish to take care of yourself, of course. But then you're operating with the knowingness that we're part of a family. I think I used the analogy before, like cells in a body. Like, imagine every human as a cell in the body of the planet, or every human is like a subatomic particle if the whole world is an atom. We're all we may seem separate, but if you believe that we're not, and then the whole body is healthier, right? Like the red blood cells go and help, and the white blood cells do their thing, and we're all together in this. And so I'm filled because I know that sharing what I can and teaching these concepts of yoga philosophy and spiritual growth is helping the world in a way. And I always like to contextualize this by saying yoga philosophy is designed to reduce suffering. So suffering, that's the mental anguish that we put on any life situation that happened, is happening now, or may happen. The mental anguish is the suffering part. And it's a beast. It can be so bad that some people take their own lives over it. And the reason, again, to contextualize why I do this, is because yoga philosophy can reduce suffering. And when I can teach that, whether it's an asana class, whether it's an alternate nostril breathing technique, that's helping reduce a little suffering. So as long as I'm doing that, my cup is filled. I have to be careful though, because we can be depleted too. Energy could be considered as infinite, but it's also finite in certain senses as well.
So when do you feel like your cup is getting depleted? Is it like how would you describe those aspects of like giving too much, or like what are the check engine light signs that come up in your mind?
It's simple. I need a lot of alone time and quiet time. And I've thought about like the ratio, but if I'm like around a bunch of people, which I love, for a certain number of hours, I need to have double or triple those hours to recharge alone, quiet, away from people. So if I'm like at a conference all day, like Friday, we had our LaTip, the networking group I was just telling you about. We had our annual convention on Friday, and I had the amazing opportunity to stand up in front of 300 business people and talk about yoga. The amazing opportunity. But it was draining because the conference was all day, 7:30 until 5 p.m. The previous night, there was a soiree, then the all-day thing on Friday. Then Saturday, we had to go back for the Cabana day where they wanted me to teach a yoga class. And then we mingled for the next few hours. So that was like 2.5 days of a lot of giving. And so this past week has been a little bit rough catching back up, but life doesn't stop. So I have to figure out how to recharge and teach my classes at Kintsugi, prepare for tomorrow's event outside. I'm going to Costa Rica a week from today. I'll be in Costa Rica 1 week from today teaching a 7-day retreat. So I've had to be creative on how to do more yoga nidras every day. I lay down for yoga nidra every single day. Some days I miss, but laying down for yoga nidra is imperative, I believe, if you want to recharge yourself. Spending some quiet time, trying to get 7-8 hours, which I fail miserably at most nights, but there are lots of ways to try to replenish your cup. You got to be vigilant about that. Don't give too much.
Where is your headspace, or what do you notice in your tendencies when you are getting to that point of like the engine lights, the gas lights on?
Overwhelm. And that's one of my character flaws, is feeling overwhelmed sometimes easily. Can I handle it and can I rally and show up? Of course, I'm pretty good about being resilient. But there's a looming, one of my flaws in this life is succumbing to the feeling of overwhelm and then wanting to pull the metaphorical covers over my head and not do anything. And that's one of my vikalpas. So my main vikalpa, which is that which V means separates us from our truth. So in the clarity workshop, we deal with our vikalpa. We try to figure out what is the biggest underlying reason that we don't shine in life. And mine is procrastination, overwhelm. It's because, and it stems back to what I said earlier in this episode, that I used to want to have to do everything and show up at the best level and be the president of the world. Like literally, I used to want to be the president of the world. Like, is there even such a thing? Who would ever want to be president of the whole world? And that's egoic too. But I was like a 13-year-old in junior high school. But that shows up as overwhelm. And yes, I say yes to too much. And then when I do that, I shoot myself in the foot every time. And at 42 years old, I haven't fixed that yet. I'm working on the vikalpa. I'm working on it, but that is my problem. It's feeling overwhelmed. And so my health isn't where it should be. This past week has been rough, like that convention, and then the check engine light's been doing this.
Well, yeah. Thank you for even taking the time to do this then.
Yeah. No, but this is important. This is my dharma though, with you. Like This is what we're doing, and that's so important.
So with I think, and if you don't mind going into a little more of like what you're experiencing with that what sounds like ever evolving how to say no and create boundaries. Like, where do you think what is helping you create healthier boundaries moving forward?
Some little things and some big things. Well, my good friend Elizabeth Delgado told me one time a few years back, she said, I think it was Thursdays that she chose to do this. She said, every Thursday I'm cutting out something from my life. Every Thursday I'm cutting out something. And like, I thought, I'm going to do that too. Well, that was before COVID, and I let that go. I forgot about that. But so cutting out like something that you think you have to do, whether it's, a favor for someone, maybe you aren't able to do that favor. Maybe you have to step back. If it's a routine that might not be necessary, if something, just say no to something. That's a small thing. I had to end a relationship. In 2018, I went through the process of ending a romantic relationship after 5 years for no apparent reason other than the fact that it was time to separate. And I did it very controversially because there was no actual reason other than my heart was not, I was a little overwhelmed and I wasn't being fair to my partner. She deserved something that I wasn't able to give. And so I had to make a huge life change in 2018. And I've had to do other things. I've had to say no. I've lost a couple of friends recently. And I didn't do it in the right way either. I told myself, I'm not going to reply to their messages right now. And it's someone that I actually cared about, but I told myself I'm very focused on other things. And that I took the easy way out by not having a conversation. I just, I'm not going to reply. I'm not going to do it. Why did I do that? Because I was overwhelmed. And then I continued to not reply, and I lost that friend. And that's happened with 2 friends recently. I say yes to so much that sometimes a text message from someone that I care about literally goes unread for weeks at a time. And I know it's there. I just don't want to read it because I'm overwhelmed. So I've got issues too. We're all in this together, man.
Yeah. Thank you for that transparency. I think that in my mind, for even what this platform is sharing those vulnerabilities. I think that that's where we all grow and heal. And like, there's, maybe you can correct this for me, but I came across that term of like samskara, where we all have like these unprocessed, or we can have these balls of undigested emotion. But I think that platforms like this and like your clarity workshop, where people can hear what someone else is going through and be like, oh, I identify with that feeling. Because everything you're mentioning, even though I had no idea about these, I still, like, even though we have these, whenever we have these conversations, it's kind of our higher selves kind of talking to each other, where we're just like, oh, this is dope, everything is dope. But the reality is everything is not dope all the time.
You think?
And
yes,
yeah, and that's where I think the value of having these types of these conversations can hopefully be healing to other people too, because how to navigate that and even be okay with being in those kind of perceived downturns of life. Because I think that hearing the humanity of other people is what makes me learn more about what it is to be human, which is that we're all figuring this out together. I think I might have shared this, like one of my favorite parts of the clarity workshop is like the vehicle. I think it was like the vehicle was when everyone was like kind of crying and things like that.
Yes.
And it's not because I love tears. It's not like I'm like, like I love your people's misery. It's more of like, oh, I'm not alone in that feeling.
Other people have the same shit or similar shit that I'm going through too.
Yeah, that feeling of like, and it's different from the news, where it's like the news can sometimes just be complete misery and just darkness and pessimism. It's just more of this feeling of, oh, we're all like, if I'm in the trenches, and that's where this immersion happens when people are together, whether it be grieving in community, because it's something that I came across from someone speaking about how funerals are this anthropologic tradition of which people are having this semi-public, semi-private, shared experience of processing emotions. And we've been doing this for thousands of years. And I think that when you speak about what you're going through and the struggles and like the ups and downs, it's like it makes me I respect you already, but it makes like the journey that you're going through, it makes me root for you that much more, where I'm like, oh, this is that feeling of like, oh, he's not just doing this because it's easy. Yeah. How does that land with you?
Yeah. I appreciate it so much because for a lot of years, it was easy. Dude, I had an easy life up until the summer of 2020. The hardest thing that ever happened to me was when I was 7 and my parents got divorced, and that was bad. I'm not gonna lie, and then after that started to settle down, and my sister and I established our life at my dad's house here in Vegas. Easy life, dude. No problems. I didn't have any hardships to speak of, and this is going to sound crazy to many people, and I always get pushback when I say it, but I needed some hardships in order to be able to teach authentically, because it was easy-ish for me. However, I've got to say, though, that I am a believer in reincarnation, and I do believe that we've all gone through more stuff that we can even, with this brain, imagine. We don't need to know specifically what we've been through in other lives. We don't need to know. All we need to know is that we're here now and we're equipped to do what we're here to do because of what we've been through. So I needed something in this life, though, to give me real world experience or remind me of the trenches. And I went through a period, and it wasn't anywhere near as deep and dark as other people have gone through in life, but it's necessary in order to teach authentically. And life is not as easy for me now as it was prior to COVID. Things are more challenging. I am navigating many more dynamics with my current relationship, with my current career change. Many of our viewers might not know that I'm shifting out of a 21-year career in real estate where I made great money into a full-time yoga teacher, meditation, and breathing teacher, which is my pure passion, my pure dharma. It is, and now I got to figure out how to monetize it, which is very strange and different in a lot of ways. But back to what you're saying about it. Thank you for saying that you have respect for me for that. No, it's definitely real. We're equals on this path. I've learned a lot. I want to share what I've learned. You've learned a lot. You're sharing what you've learned. You're doing the same thing I'm doing, just in your way, and I'm doing it in my way. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. And with that being said, like navigating a space where there isn't a blueprint, right? You're not like following, there isn't a yoga instructor class on how to like leave real estate and become a yoga instructor yet.
Yeah. It's fascinating though.
So what does that look like for you, of like the ideas that you're coming up with to
It's kind of the wild, wild west in the world of professional yoga teachers. Meaning there isn't a blueprint. It's not an established career path, really. It's really not, because a yoga, guru or a teacher traditionally has been someone who, in the eastern part of the globe, students would find these people and they would have very simple lives and they'd grow their own food and all that. Well, I live in Las Vegas. I'm not going to grow my own food back there, and no one's going to find me unless I post on Instagram. So I live in a very different paradigm than the ancient yoga guru paradigm. So what does it look like for me? Well, I'm fortunate to have a career in real estate because it's taught me so much about business. So I've prepared myself a little bit financially for it. In 2018, I set a 5-year plan to leave real estate. And 2023 was the year that I did it, 5 years later. And the universe aligned for me. Specifically, I had the largest real estate sale of my life in 2022. So I had a big cushion of cash. I'm like, this is my sign. Let's go. And then in real estate, we were always taught to sit on a stool with at least 3 legs of income. Now, what that means is if you have a stool that you're sitting on and it has 1 leg, it's not going to be stable. So the leg is your source of income or source of business. 2 legs for your stool is still not very stable. 3 is fairly stable, and then 4 is even better. So I figured out which 4 streams of income I needed to establish in my yoga career, and here they are. So the way to make it a good living, a decent living as a yoga, meditation, breathwork teacher is teaching retreats. That's an excellent way to make an income and to create big change with people. And so I'm so happy to say that 1 week from today, I'm going back to Costa Rica with my dear friend Tanya, and she and I have led 3 in Costa Rica. This will be our 4th one. And this week in Costa Rica it's a great moneymaker for us, which is amazing. But more so than that, between 25 and 30 souls that go with us, it is transformative for them. A yoga retreat should be so transformative if it's done with the right people, the right teachers, and the right location. Transformative. And then I'm going to say, hands down, controversially, it's way better than an ayahuasca journey. I'm going to say that. It's controversial because ayahuasca can be transformative, right? A week on a yoga retreat, I think, is far more transformational, I think. So that's one of my 4 legs. The second thing is teaching workshops and trainings, which I'm doing. And you've come to so many, my friend, thank you. So the clarity workshop, the yoga philosophy workshop, I have a whole host of workshops.
Yoga Nidra.
Yoga Nidra workshops, those things, yes. Teaching private clients. So I teach one-on-one sessions to individuals and to groups. Thai yoga body work, breathing one-on-ones, yoga one-on-ones. So that's the third. And then here's the fourth. It's corporate wellness. And I've had the great pleasure to have a few corporate clients already. My dear friend Mackenzie Taylor is one of my clients. I love her dearly. You know Mackenzie. She's been to the Clarity Workshops. She hires me all the time to teach her company. She has between, 7 and 10 employees. And they were just here. They come to my backyard for sessions. I go to her space for sessions. I have a couple other companies that I go in. And so that's what I'm looking to build more of. I've been in talks with Sands Corp. The HR department at Sands has been talking to me. They haven't hired me, but to come in and teach breathing and meditation to the HR department at Sands. I've been to Natalia's show, Cirque du Soleil, the Michael Jackson show. I've taught them 4 or 5 different times, breathing, meditation, and yoga. The performers at the MJ. It's CEOs and any leadership at a company who believes in wellness and helping the employees learn meditation techniques and breathing techniques is real. The benefits are real. Oh, the owner of Le Tip, the big convention I just went to, the owner has hired me to teach the executive staff, to teach them how to breathe. So those are my 4 stools of income, or 4 legs.
It's interesting as you talk about this, where it doesn't seem like there's any ambition to open up a yoga studio. And I've asked ChatGPT on what the logistics are about that, and it doesn't seem like a very easily profitable model.
From my perspective, it is absolutely not profitable in the slightest. From my perspective, and maybe some yoga studio owners can comment and give your experience, but from what I've seen, it's absolutely just a labor of love. And only if it's a corporate situation and you're the top of a corporate conglomerate that owns multiple locations and you don't ever have to go there and everyone runs it for, maybe there's profit at that level, but I have no desire to own a brick and mortar building or to run a physical location at all.
Why is that?
I don't want the admin work. I want to teach. I don't want to manage teachers or a schedule. I want to do my own thing. What I do want to do is travel to studios and offer what I can to studios. And I have a dear friend who runs a studio in Grand Junction. I've been there and taught there. I have a friend in Kingman who runs a studio. I've been there. Different places. And I guess that's a 5th leg. I want to travel and offer what I can in yoga studios elsewhere, but I don't want to own one or run one or manage one at all.
Why are they so not easily profitable? What have you?
Good question. I'm just going to guess it's simple economics. All the expenses, the overhead, and then the membership fees, they just don't really correlate. They're just not. They break even. There might be a little profit.
Yeah.
And I can't speak with certainty because I've never seen the books, but.
No, I've tried to ask ChatGPT about even if you charge $100, and this not to get too boring, but it's just the idea of even if you have 1,000 members to make overhead and charge and anyways, the whole idea that I'm still trying to piece through, and as I talk to you about it, I'm reminded about trying to figure out a cost-effective way for people to get the type of experience that we get through at these yoga studios, but where it's for everyone, because that's where so I work as a family medicine doctor, and everyone, I always try to prescribe yoga, but it's usually through YouTube. But I know they're not getting the same experience that I've gotten because they can't afford this, $100 a month or even $50 a month cost for most people. So that's where I'm I don't know what that looks like. I think an aspect that I, hope to plant a seed for 100 years from now is where some part of health insurance is covering for that.
This is such a good conversation, Jason. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'd like to add though that I think the industry needs some kind of revamping because the yoga teachers, I don't believe are paid fairly. I personally do not believe, from the way I see it, and I am no financial expert nor economic expert at all, but the way I see it is most yoga studios pay yoga teachers so little that it's a losing proposition each class unless you do a double class back to back, because you got to consider drive time, arriving early, staying late, and then dude, some studios start teachers at $25 a class, whether it's 60, 75 or 90. How does that even make sense? And in Vegas, I can't say what the top pay rate is, but it might be 75, 80. It might be. I don't know for sure per class. But even that, my hourly rate for a private is $120 for an hour.
Wow.
And people pay that because they believe I'm worth it.
Oh, 100%.
And I love teaching public classes, but you notice I didn't say public classes anywhere in my 5 legs of, I love doing it, but it's not a moneymaker.
Oh, this is so interesting. And I'm not interested in like a beneficial way for yoga instructors, but because in my mind, I never knew, I thought y'all got paid more, because this is what's nuts is that like, and people do deserve to get paid in terms of therapy, but like whenever I was going to yoga, like even when I took your class, I'm like, this is very cost effective therapy, physically and emotionally. And in 1 hour, you're helping 20 to 30 people go through physical therapy, go through emotional therapy.
It's amazing. And I think people should go. I think it's worth $100 a month. I think it's better than a gym membership.
100%. But the fact that you're getting paid so little is what blows my mind.
And that's why the industry, like I said, I think it needs to be revamped, because the studio owners aren't making a profit. The teachers certainly as heck aren't making a profit. And the students are strapped to pay the fees. So where's all the money going? Well, the rents are so high, the overhead. I mean, I don't know. I'm not qualified to speak on this. We should bring in one of our, I know several studio owners. I bet you we could get somebody on our podcast, because this is interesting. The industry is weird. The yoga industry is strange.
Because this is the thing that what inspired the post yoga reflections is because you all as yoga instructors have this very, very unique skill set of being able to hold a space, teach something with precision, and be present with multiple people at once. So that's the idea of essentially why most teachers in general, like whether it's grade school, high school, or are never really fairly compensated. But that's the idea of essentially even what a doctor, if you like in Latin derivation, is like docere, which means to teach. So like us as doctors, like in the Western medical field, like get paid a decent amount of money, but it's the idea of like it's so inefficient. It's this idea of like I can see 16 to 20 people in one day over a 10-hour day, but you can see that same amount and get way more done in an hour. And I'm like, what? But even then, if people knew, this is the thing of why I bring up health.
That's interesting.
Yeah, what I bring up, because that's one thing I observe, where I'm just I feel this great sense of where a big part of my Dharma, which is to help create a bridge between Eastern and Western medicine, is this aspect of like, oh, how do we integrate this skill set that people are yoga instructors have with this model in which not enough people, there's way more people that are sick, hurt, or in need of healing than we have in terms of ratio. So that's where there's this term that I've come across, which is AOE healing, which is area of effect. It refers to like in video games how there's like a checkpoint where people stand around and it creates this healing circle. Another way to think about it is just like if there's an outlet and multiple people can charge. So that's what I really look at what yoga is. It's like the idea of like you're as a yoga instructor facilitating like an area of effect in which multiple people are being healed instead of single target, instead of just one person.
That is an interesting concept. Well, all the training and education that you have is very different than what we have. In Western medicine, of course, in spiritual studies, it's hard to, quantify how much experience someone has to teach in that realm.
It is. It's tricky. That's where I think like standardizations and so many different aspects, but I do think that there's something here that I, even with us like connecting and having this conversation, hopefully my whole hope and even my biggest intention with this is like, I don't think I have the answers. It's the idea of by putting this out there, it's not this idea of necessarily even manifestation. It's this idea that the more people that hear these thoughts, there may be someone that's like, oh, it might create a trickle down. Similarly to like a lot of the vocabulary I even use in general, like it's so picked up from all of your classes.
Nice.
And
please
so many different classes. Like it's this idea of where we're all I feel like we all learn a little bit of vocabulary and learn a little bit of a recipe of how to approach each situation more effectively. And that's how we always evolved as humans, right? Where it's this idea of you go, like people traveled to the West Indies and figured out that like you can gather these spices and put these things together and this can heal this. But now more than ever, are we able to share ideas? But yet I still feel like there's so much inefficiency in how things have evolved, at least from a Western medicine's aspect of things, like where it's still the model of like this one-on-one is so, it's what we all saw during the pandemic, where it's just like this car accident happened and like we're still suffering from the collapse of people not obtaining up-to-date care. In terms of like, there's this long line, is my point, is that I looked at the pandemic as this traffic jam, and people are still kind of trying to recover from that traffic jam.
Mm-hmm. That's true, huh? Yeah.
And that's why we're like, whether it's even just weight or how you even describe where like the 2020 period of like recovering emotionally, there's still so many things that I think that I think about that period of time as this sense of urgency. That's where my whole point of like having these conversations, I'm so driven to kind of bring this light to people like you that are taking the model of, like you described, we can do the whole matrix paycheck to paycheck, but no one is freaking happy with that model. Like, yes, people can like make do and kind of survive, but I think this next generation are really like where people they have terms like quiet quitting, or people are like, oh, they're just lazy. But it's just the idea of like, no, I think that people are just kind of getting more aware that there are other options other than just following what has come before. Because it's not the idea of like disrespecting what's come before, but it's the idea of, like we're describing with this the necessity for a revamp in the yoga model. Like, what was that even based off of? Like, what are we even based off of?
Right. Probably gyms, probably fitness classes, like, boot camp and Pilates and group fitness at gyms.
Yeah.
It was probably based on that.
Yeah, because like it's interesting. Like I'm gonna plant this seed too, because like one of the I use ChatGPT a lot to ask a lot of these rhetorical questions, and one of the questions I asked was like, what's the wealthiest or a more profitable business model for gyms? And it's actually Planet Fitness. So what their model is based off of is that they charge only like $10 a month, but their whole thing is that like they charge so little, but so many people actually don't go because it's so little. So they're able to like get like 10,000 members, but only like 1,000 members go.
So that's more profitable than like the Equinox model.
Yeah, the EOS and all these luxury ones. It's interesting, right?
Lifetime and even that's very interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know what that looks like, but I think there's something too where there's just more of these accessible, cost-effective healing circles, which I think you're doing, where you're just like, hey, why don't you guys come to my really nice backyard, which is like nicer than a yoga studio, and where it goes direct to you, where it's like remove the McDonald's and like let's go to the person that's just making a very authentic burger.
I thought it would be easier to do that. I'm finding that it's tough. That I'm trying to do that, and I am doing that. People are coming. Like tomorrow, we'll have like as of right now, there are 9 people signed up to come, and I thought more silly me. I thought we'd have 30 because everyone loves it. They love it. But when I used to do it for free, and now that I'm charging $35 a head, I don't know if that's too much. And I'm trying to whore myself out on Instagram more because I'm realizing that I have to get the word out, and I'm emailing people. I'm marketing myself now, and it's not as easy as I thought, man. I thought a lot more people would want to come and do yoga out there. I thought, and I have to figure that out.
This is what I would like to plant a seed for, which is where you have this unique approach to teaching, but there's other tools that I think that you give that maybe is not out there, which is one of the things is like almost integrating some aspects of this is just brainstorming, but just aspects of like the discussions that you facilitate, where it's like maybe it isn't just the class, but even after it's the community. Because that's where I think that like for me, I really value one of the reasons I go to the studio I go to is just more so just to hang out with the people that.
Me too. I love group classes because it's community. I love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then adding this extra thing of like, okay, just the way that when Zia, we were the 4 of us, and even some of those other people were staggered. Yeah. That's actually for me why I'll pay for what I'll pay for is this. It's like school, right? Like where the things that most at least that I remember from like high school, wasn't anything I really learned in a math class. It was just the moments I got to share with people.
Jason, I don't know that we can advertise that though and make it sound, and that happens. Like every time we have, like when we used to meet over here for our clarity workshops and things, every time when that was done, we'd hang out and talk. People would bring food. Luby would bring food. Even Tabby from St. George would come and she brought food a bunch of times. I guarantee you we'll stay out there. So it's from 2 to 3:30. I guarantee we'll be out there until 4:30 or 5, hanging out and talking.
Yeah.
It happens organically. I don't know that I could put that. Come for yoga and a sound bath and community.
Stay for the community.
Come for the yoga. Stay for the community. But that is the best part of it. You're right.
Yeah, I think that, and that's what I'm still piecing together, because that's what I talked to David a lot about, is like because again, going back to the bigger thing that I feel like there's value in doing this work is creating a space or a niche, a non-denominational space for people to process emotion in community.
Say that one more time. That was cool, dude. Non-denominational?
Yeah, non-denominational place for people to process their emotions in community.
Ooh.
Because I mean, essentially, that's what like I think people go to church for. It's like, hey, let's like
yeah, right.
But then it's like this is non-denominational, and that's actually why I go to yoga now. It's more of like, again, when I do the reflections, even though I'm highlighting these people, it's like I'm actually like, by asking these questions to people, they're helping me process things within myself.
Whoosh. So awesome, dude.
Yeah. No, I mean,
so awesome.
But that's essentially what helped me come out of like my burnout in medicine, is that like when I stopped looking at it as like I'm here to, it's not this one way energy drive of like I'm here to save this person. I'm like, let me hear this person's story and help this person realize that they have everything they need to help themselves to an aspect.
Man, I think we need to do a part 2 of this.
In summary, I think that there's a lot of things that I think you and I talked about today that I hope we can continue to build upon.
Me too.
Any final thoughts, my friend?
Back to Dharma. It's accessible for everybody, and it's not only accessible, but it's possible and it's realistic to find your path. Life is a river, and it goes in a direction, and most of us usually unwillingly are swimming against the current. And once we find the current, things get so much better. And finding the current sometimes means letting go of a branch or a boulder you're hanging on to that's keeping the current's going that way and you're hanging on to it. And letting go is usually what's required to find your flow. The universe does it to us on purpose, though, because they want us to grow in consciousness to find that on our own. That's why it doesn't always seem easy, but it is possible. It is possible. I believe in you.
I believe in you too. I believe in you, man.
I believe in you.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Ooh.
This is great.
Until next time, right?
Peace.